everybody. Welcome to Jesse's Tea House. Very happy to be here today with Simon Twu.
Hey guys, how's it going, man?
So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drinking some tea and talking about Simon's experience being an actor in both China and the United States. 也是双语的人，对不对？
双语。
对，中文、英文都会说。So we have, it's going to be a fun conversation with not only somebody who speaks both languages, but also somebody that lived in my city in Beijing for many, many years. Yeah. The sort of like old Beijing crowd are always people I love hanging out with.
Oh yeah, it's so fun.
So very cool. So you are Taiwanese American, is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Taipei, Taiwan, and but I was raised everywhere.
Okay, so you're like
everywhere.
You are a global person.
Global, yeah.
Global. So so I was trying to think of what tea I would make for you to begin the conversation. I asked him behind the scenes. I was like, anything you personally drink? And I was like, oh, we got a tea person. He's like, oh, I'd like some high mountain oolong tea. And I'm like, oh, actually, I have that. I got some Alishan Oolong cha. So this will be a
Alishan Oolong cha is the best.
Yeah, and you'll notice it's like the bag looks a little janky because it's almost empty because I drink it all.
Usually it comes in little pebbles, right?
Yep, there we go.
There you go, just like that, guys. Leaves. Like as you guys can see, it comes in little pebbles like that.
Oh, it is good. We got the whole tea display.
You guys can check it out. Boom.
So the especially
little pebbles.
The Taiwanese friends of mine, a lot of them, this is like the stuff that they grew up drinking.
Oh yeah, so they're more pricey, but they're really good though.
Mm-hmm. It's worth it.
It's pungent. It's a strong flavor.
Good. We got tea people on, even better. I was thinking when I was like thinking of who to invite on the show, I was like, I definitely want to be inviting on people who are, kind of making stuff between the cultures, but even better if they're already tea people. Yeah. So fantastic. So basically. Could you give everybody a little bit of a rundown who you are, what you've been up to, and sort of, your space between the U.S. and China right now?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, and just add on, I actually hosted 5 food shows before.
Oh, yeah? Oh, you're a food show guy. Yeah. Dude, I didn't even know that. What was it like hosting food shows? Did it make you hungry?
You know what? It makes the audience hungry, but the person who's hosting it, oftentimes you have to eat a lot. Oh. So we always have a spit bucket, for those of you who don't know. It's delicious food and you're spitting it. It's kind of like, but you have to. If you're eating like 7 meals a day, 8 meals a day.
Well, you can't actually eat it.
You can't.
So it's like a weird exercise in like, am I enjoying this or no?
I'm always going to enjoy it. Like I'm such a foodie, I'm always going to enjoy it, but you just have to pace yourself. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, 7 meals. Yep. Let's say every meal has 13 course, 20 course. Oh, God. Like, just imagine that. Like, you can't finish the plate, obviously, right? So,
exactly.
But it's fun. So, like, I love learning about tea. I love learning about cultures and foods. And thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, for sure. So this is the Alishan High Mountain Oolong. Give it a little bit of a wash steep, get it opened up.
Nice.
The Alishan is nice. The smell is not quite out there yet, but it'll be out here in the second steep. The oolongs are kind of like a fun thing. I feel like because of boba, actually, more and more people in America know what oolong is. Because it's like, who would have guessed it would be boba that brought like really good tea culture to the States? But that people see like oolong on the list of like that you can get in boba shops, and then they're like, oh, I've seen that before. That's what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Well, have you been to the original boba store in the world?
The original boba store?
Yeah.
Where's the original boba store?
It's in Taichung, Taiwan. It's in the middle of Taiwan, and it's called
Chun Tang.
Yeah, so I was doing a food show, and
that's like a very high level name for a boba place.
Oh, it's
like Chun Tang. That would be spring, the spring water, like a villa, I guess you would say.
Yeah,
the tang.
Like a tang,
like a pavilion, maybe.
Yeah, or like a temple or
yes.
Your haven. So Chun Tang, for example, that place you have to visit. By the way, since you do this,
give it a try.
You have to visit. Okay, so they actually use very high quality tea for their boba.
See, this is like the thing I have been trying to unravel, because a lot of people are like, oh, can I use your tea for boba? And I'm like, you can, but like, if you have better quality tea, you're gonna lose a lot of you're gonna lose a lot of that specialness when you dump tons of milk and sugar on it.
Of course.
So I'd be very curious. I should make like a pilgrimage to see how they do it.
You have to check it out. Yeah.
It's actually not a bad idea at all. Cheers.
Cheers.
Here we go. Pung. Here we go. One day.
Ching ching l'chaim.
Yeah. Ching ching l'chaim. I like it. Very nice.
slowly enjoy this.
That's good. So the
Smells like home.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, what kind of smell memory do you get from the high mountain oolong?
You know, honestly, it's not the most pretty image, but it's reminiscence of my childhood when I was climbing the mountain. It's a little dirt, you know, because the dirt roads, that's where you find the real good tea.
Yeah.
Like, it's not usually like touristy paved roads, right? You go on the mountain, and one of the shows I was doing, we actually got up around like 6 a.m. or 5 a.m.
Okay.
Just to visit those
Get up to there before the sun
rises.
rises.
Or like, you know, those older ladies.
Yeah.
And they're like grandma kind of levels, like 70, 80 years old. They get on the mountain early on when the morning dew is still there. Pluck the leaves.
Get the leaves.
Get the fresh stuff. Like, it's just, and obviously they have to still dry and presses and stuff, but still, when you get the real good stuff in the mountains, that's what it reminds me of.
And for the tea people, the one way you can try to check whether your tea is
Cheers. Oh, you almost out.
One way you can check to see whether your tea was hand picked or not. If it was machine picked, you'll wind up with a lot of like broken, chopped up leaves and twigs. Because the machines come through, and it's like there's definitely a place in the world for the machine process stuff.
You got twigs once before.
Oh yeah, you get twigs.
That's horrible,
dude. Like you have no idea what I've seen in the American tea world. Because I was a tea guy. I only got into tea when I was in China. Right. And in China, you're not gonna find like twigs in your tea. And
no,
stuff
never.
Like that. But like here,
you got
like
scammed.
it's crazy, man. I mean, this is part of the reason why, you know, don't get me on a teabag rant or else I've invited a guest on, just rant about teabags forever. But like, that's part of the reason why all this stuff gets ground up in the American teabags is because they know that they're processing it by machine. They know that they're not getting good tea quality. So they're like, oh, but if it's powderized, you can't tell anyway. So anyway, I want to get into talking about the creative stuff because as much as I love talking about tea, you know, I talk a lot into the camera about tea, and I love spending time with other people that are creating across the cultures, dealing with these interesting cultural areas. Well, I guess the first question is, what made you feel like you wanted to be like a bilingual actor or performer?
Well, I kind of grew into it. So I grew up going to. I went to 18 different countries when I was 17.
Oh my gosh.
29 different schools growing up.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, so this is what I figured. So I'm like Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and a little bit of Dutch.
A little Dutch.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Like, how do you have any idea which of your like ancestors? Like,
I think it's my dad's side because we were looking at our ancestry, not just the tree, but also the picture.
Yeah.
But like the black and white photos, like.
You know, the Dutch were in Taiwan,
that's right,
like a long time ago. So that might be a little bit of Dutch, just 400 years.
Yeah, just a little bit. But we do have some family people who are Dutch in those photos, in those black and white photos.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, who are these people who are black and white photos? They look white.
Yeah. Here's a question. What was the term for Lawai 400 years ago? Like, what did they call? They called them Lawai. I don't know. Yeah. So you have a little bit of mix of everywhere.
I know.
Oh, you do know? Oh, dude, I was making a joke. What did they call them?
I think it's like baigui.
Baigui. Yeah, baigui. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, baigui. That was
white ghost.
White ghost.
Because they're so pale.
That was always my joke. Is like, you know, like, you know, in Thanksgiving, not Thanksgiving, in Halloween in China, I never had to get a costume because I'm always a baigui. I'm always the white ghost.
Oh man, thank you.
Cheers.
And do you guys know what this means? When you knock.
Oh yeah, check in. Tell them what the tap on the table means.
So it means thank you. So when someone pours teas for you, you just go like this.
Yep.
And do you know why?
Tell them why.
Okay, so apparently in the last emperor, right? He's young. He's very, very young. He loves to sneak out of the Forbidden City. However, obviously he's not allowed because you can't lose the emperor, right? So he would have his concubine, one of his servants, the Constrati servants, you know, the one that like and he would come out, sneak out with him. But one day, to stay in disguise, the emperor actually poured the tea for his servant.
The servant, that's not okay for the servant.
That is not okay.
Not
Servants can't even look at the emperor in the eye at the time, right? If you look in the eye, you get beheaded. So if the emperor did something for you, he didn't know what to do. He had to get on his knees, but he can't get on his knees because, you know, he's gonna
blow the cover.
Blow the cover, exactly. So that's why he was trying to get on his knees by his hands. So he was like.
So it's sort of bending the finger, pretending to kowtow before the emperor, as a thanks, and that kind of came down to the modern day.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool.
Cheers.
I love the. This is kind of the cool thing about growing up, I guess, around the world, is you've kind of accumulated a lot of like different places and stories, and it all comes together. Do you feel like that helps you be a better actor, just in general?
Oh, 100%. Like, acting is all about incorporating or understanding someone's culture and empathy. So if you don't understand its culture, there's no way.
Yeah. Well, I love the word to use, empathy, because that was always the biggest challenge for me. I felt as a white actor in China, was there were only so many roles. And it's, this is a challenge a lot of people have. And again, you're one person. You can't play everybody in the movie. So you don't need to be everybody. But it oftentimes felt like the white roles were, obviously there are no white writers there. So there were very few foreigners that were putting their own story into the script. And so as a result, you had Chinese writers who need to have a Westerner in a scene for a very specific tool. It almost felt like I was a hammer. I was like, I'm useful for this scene for that. And
welcome to the club in America.
I know, right? And so this is the thing: is I feel so much empathy for the Asian performers now, who are trying to figure out how do you work into that thing. And for me, the solution was writing and producing. And so the idea that you might wait 50 years for somebody to write that role that you really like. Or you can be, I don't have to say you make the whole movie yourself, but you can be a part of making the movie and not just the end actor. Did you find any sort of thing like that, either here in the States or being sort of like a international Chinese acting in China?
Yeah, well, so it was really funny. So when I was working in Taiwan and also China, I also did a little bit of Japan, North Korea, and Hong Kong, but it was really interesting because we were the majority, like you said.
Yeah.
So most of the writing I was able to incorporate myself.
Yeah.
But I was also very lucky because I was bicultural and bilingual, so I was able to help them with some of the script implementation.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That was one thing that I realized when I started looking into the scripts for the foreign actors in China. It's not like they're intentionally writing bad scripts. It's like there are so many things that go on to making a movie, and the legitimateness or the empathy towards the one foreigner character in the movie is always the 300th most important thing going on. And so it just never gets around. But I found that hey, if I was on set and I could give a better line, they would oftentimes take it. And obviously it's easier to do that in the script form than waiting until the day everything is crazy and then doing that. But how do you feel can you give an example of a time when you felt like you were able to help a cultural problem on set in Asia by being intercultural?
100%. So one of the co-productions I did was called Magic 7. It was actually invested by the company owned by, do you know Andy Lau?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was by Andy Lau. It was some great casts, my friend Chu Jingjing, she was the second female lead in Wandering Earth. And then Jiang Wenli Lao Shi, she was a great teacher and actress. A little ahead of her time, but she's amazing. She won 经济百花, all the golden awards in China.
不容易. All the big awards.
All the big awards. She's got all of them, and she's amazing. Not just an actor, but a teacher and a person.
Yeah.
So so it was. I was very fortunate to be on these sets. But for example, that co-production set, it was awesome because the script was written in English, Chinese, and French.
So did they have a full script in each language?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And for me, I didn't read French, but I had spoken in a couple of movies before that already.
Yeah.
So I got a chance to read both the Chinese script and the English script. And when I did that, obviously, here's the thing with co-productions. Most co-production writers and stuff they're barely bilingual.
Yeah.
They're not bicultural mostly.
Yeah. A lot of this is it almost seems like fate. It's you look at some of these things why are these people on that project, and yet that's who we got. So we're going with that. They knew the right people to bring everything together. But yeah, the having different scripts, you would definitely. I have had that exact situation too, looking through scripts and seeing oh, I know what you're trying to do, especially with a comedy. They're I know you're trying to do that joke, and it's not going to work in that language in the way that you're doing it. But if it's not like the concept is bonkers, it's just like you got to reword it, you got to move this over here, like basic comedy technique. But what was the example? So you were on that movie, and what was the example of a time you felt like you were able to help out culturally?
So it was awesome because like most production, as you experience, co-productions, there's the one local production and one the U.S. production or European production, and oftentimes they barely can communicate. Like they communicate the best they can over the time, and they're doing good. It's just that, but a lot of subtleties. Yeah. You know, the implementations and implications. So for me as an actor, I actually did the homework reading both scripts. And sometimes, like when you're building a movie, like a story, you go set up, punch. Yeah. But sometimes in different languages, set up, punch. You know, so
三番四抖 in 相声. So I studied the traditional Chinese 相声 comedy. In West we have the rule of three: set up, punch. In Chinese, it was actually 三番四抖, 3 sets, 4th 抖. The fourth is the fan.
Fan, which is the opposite.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. So but at the same time, I don't know whether you felt this. I felt like the pacing was actually relatively similar, but but because you have 3 to get through, in the Chinese one it goes faster. So in America, it might be a what, and a what. Whereas in China, it'd be like a what, and a what.
Yeah.
It would be like, so you kind of get to the punch at a similar time, but how you do that setup changes whether the audience is going to be comfortable with what comes out at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very subtle and it's very specific to every script or situation that we call it. So it's quite interesting, but it's not just that pinpoint of the joke punchline of the joke itself, but it's also this development of the storyline. Yeah. So that's where it gets tricky. Like, for example, a person's second conflict should be on scene 13 in the U.S. script, but the Chinese script might be, you need to set it up on the 26th scene. So now there's a conflict of the same scene.
Can you solve that by editing, or is it a unresolvable problem?
Here's the thing: it's resolved. Nothing's unresolvable if you can communicate. Yeah. So it's really, as an actor, you don't have the whole full control. But if, as a professional actor, you can try your best to communicate with the production director first. If he's open-minded and he likes to hear you out or communicate with us, that's the best. And you're like, thank you. And then if so, then maybe you can also communicate with the producers. And if everyone's aligned, or the scriptwriter, and then you have a better shot at it. So for example, in this film, I actually haven't seen it yet, but I did my best. And it was really awesome because I did communicate with the director and the producer. And I remember the producers, and the director gave me really good notes. He was like, Simon, thank you so much for doing your homework.
Oh, that's great. It's always nice to be appreciated, even if it's because some directors are not like that. You know, like some directors are like, they're like, do this. You know, they, especially as a comedian, I was always involved with the writing part. And I don't know why in China, but the writers are all the way down at the bottom. It feels like the writers never got any love. Once they delivered the script, the director would do his thing, and then they say, go to the writers and say, now change it. And then wait to get back. But it's good the directors were open to that.
Yeah, well, he's a French director. He's a director who did a lot of series in France. He was Luc Besson's partner. Oh, nice. His name is Gar Krosky. Nice. He did Taxi series. Nice. With or like Wasabi. Oh, nice. The movie. And it was awesome. He was a great director. He was a great time working with him. But I'll never forget. Yeah. That guy was so awesome. He was like, when I got on set the first day in Shanghai, and as I got to this, was the Waitan.
Yeah, the bun.
The bun, and so and then I got applause, and I was like, oh, there's something coming. What am I missing? I just got on set. I was like, it's not my set yet. You always go on a set ahead of before your shot, right? Yep. So I'm looking around trying to absorb the tone and the cadence of this production. And then, so I was looking around for the applause. I was like, and then they were applauding for me. They're like, Simon,
you're here.
We look everywhere for this Chen Bing role, and you really nailed it.
That's so great.
I know.
But that's and that gives you the confidence, and then you can actually perform to your best.
Oh yeah, right. And he was so cool. He was just like, Simon, you know the script so well, because I did my homework. I did a whole month it wasn't covered by production, but I did my whole month and a half of research for the role. So I literally lay on, it's a film about soccer. So I laid on the soccer and went to the local places to take up game with people.
Nice.
I did everything a month and a half, which is the U.S. training, the Meister technique, really this, some sense memory techniques, really just method acting, really. So it was so nice. After that, I remember that after that they shot that scene.
Yep.
We had a conversation with the writer, and he was like, Simon, I'm going to give you the liberty to change whatever you want, as long as the writer and you guys agree. Go ahead.
That's good.
I was like, whoa! Like in America, you
But
never get that.
No, you wouldn't. And also, but for a multicultural thing, it's so important because it's one thing to like try something difficult culturally and have it not work, but you gave it your best shot.
Yeah.
It's another to like, no, it's not going to work, people. Like it's on the paper. Like it's especially for comedy, you have this really big like, did they laugh? Did they not laugh? Like it's a little bit easier to tell whether it's working because you can feel it right in the room immediately. And if it's not working, it's like, the worst feeling is like crashing a train into a wall, but then because you're making a video, you crash it again and again and again. And like normally in a comedy show, like, comedy's hard, you change the line. But if you're not allowed to change a line or you're not allowed to change the basic things to make it work, then it gets like unbearable. So it's had some bad experiences, but but it sounds like going back to the bilingual multicultural part of this. Do you feel like when you play, let's say you play a character that only speaks one language, right? Do you feel like you're now kind of fighting with one hand behind your back in terms of prepping that character? No. You don't feel that way at all. Why not?
Well, because I grew up everywhere, and I actually took Chinese classes for 8.5 years for 3 hours a day.
Oh wow!
Privately.
You're like Chinese school, sort of.
Like my Chinese private tutor.
Oh no, your parents are like 你必须得说好，你得学会怎么写字，你必须得写。No.
Well, I did some of that when I was a kid, but like as an adult, that's what I did.
Oh yeah.
Beijing.
Oh, so that's why you're in Beijing for language. So is it similar then? We both went like language programs. The intensive programs.
I had a fan who was awesome. She had a Chinese school. So she would literally teach me 3 hours a day.
Oh, that's great.
Privately. So it was
one-on-one?
Awesome. Yeah, one-on-one.
That's the way to learn.
It was so great. We learned like 中国文化要点.
Oh,
nice. And like or like 清明朝怎么说话,
yeah.
whatever. And then
so like it's more specific topics. Yeah, better because that's also part of the challenge. A lot of people learn in Chinese, and then all the things are like 你好，请问怎么点菜? And it's like that's fine, but it's also like if you're intellectually engaged with it. You oftentimes can learn way more than if you're just like kind of getting through the basics.
Oh yeah. And it was really fun. It's just like the United States, there's a lot of states and a lot of different cultures within the country. China's the same thing. And so, for example, like 干哈呢?
干哈呀?
干哈? So like, and then Beijing.
你瞅啥? 你瞅啥?
That's Dongbei, right?
Yeah, Dongbei style.
It's northeastern Chinese, right?
北京
的话是 like.
我告诉你，这是我告诉你，这是北京。哎，
等你啊！我告诉你，
我告诉你，如果我们在北京录节目的话，这样可不行。
那不行，还
得休息一下。
对，就是这样，肚子要稍微大一点，
肚子大一点之后，这样好，这样好。然后这个我们就缺一点北冰洋菊花茶。
北冰洋。
I don't know why。
这白酒，
来白酒，
来，
哎，
干了，哎呀，
哎，这好，我再给你倒。
领导，别弄，不行。
We just went full Beijing on this show real fast. That's the thing is I found is like I miss Beijing so much. I lived there 9 years, and it's like you give me half a moment to go back into the whole Beijing mode, and I'm like, bam, I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm there.
It's fine.
I still feel well. And so this is another question, maybe a little bit more of a personal question, but like for me, I lived in China many years. I moved there right after college, so as kind of a creative professional, my whole career was there up until the pandemic. Yeah. And now I'm in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So it's like, on one hand, I feel like, wow, I'm like not a Hollywood person in that sense. But on the other hand, it's like, I like the same things they like. I like shooting stuff. I like making things. I like recording videos. I like, throwing it together. Like, what was one thing that you learned as somebody that floated between the two creative worlds that kind of like gives you a little bit of an anchor of how to be you in both places at the same time?
So, well, I think I was really so it's a blessing and a curse of the way I was raised.
Mm.
Because my family's like very busy, so I kind of grew up myself with my grandparents and my family. You got to be independent right away.
Yeah.
Very early stage, and I had to immerse myself in different languages. So one thing I learned early on is to appreciate the people that helped you, and which is how to blend in, how to understand people fast. The shortest amount of time for survival purposes. Yeah. So that really got me to understand people's psyche and empathize at a deeper level. And I think because I didn't have the ego of like, oh, my culture's the best, So it really got me to immerse myself faster.
It really is such such a great gift of not having the blinders on of like, because I learned everything growing up this way, it must be better. And then having to slowly break down that mentality over many years. Like when I lived in China, there were like I think when I first got there, I had the idea that like, oh yeah, well it's a different country, things are going to be different, right? But I think in the back of my head, it was like, well, I'm sure some things will be better than America, but I think in the back of my head, I was like, but most things probably will be better where I was from. And I don't think I really thought that proactively. I think that it was more ingrained. I didn't feel like it would be 50-50. I don't know how to say it. But then the more you live in other places, I feel like the more I'm like, you just have no idea when you go to a place, like whether your home was doing it better or their home was doing it better. Also define better for who?
Yeah.
So like, once you start breaking all that down and again looking at it with empathy, you're like, wow, there are many, many ways to live. And so I think the challenging part for me in coming back here has been, okay, now that I have broken down those things and I'm more open myself, I get back to the States and nobody else has done that. It's just the people that lived abroad. Yeah. And so I have to be I don't know exactly what this, I go and do English stand-up shows and I joke on this, but like the guy's like, how should I introduce you? And I'm like, oh, tell them that I was on 换了喜剧人 and whatever, 巴黎后脱口秀. Next guy's really funny. Next guy's really funny. But I'm like, and then the joke here is that like, it almost feels like,
that's funny.
It's like behind that joke, it almost feels like, but my shows aren't as good because they happen in China. But then I flipped around. I'm like, who the hell? Like, why is it like 欢乐喜剧人 is a big show in China. 八零后脱口秀 is like the seminal Chinese stand-up comedy show. Somebody else was on some random something on a third-tier TV. Like, why shouldn't my credit stack up against their credit? But the people here are never going to give that to you.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, there are definitely exceptions, but you're right. Like the majority, that's how I felt too after coming back. Like, I don't have that many followers. Like, I'm just a little over a million on Weibo, and I never post anything. But I remember the show. I don't know if you watched any of those.
Which was?
There's something called a Perfect Dating.
Oh, it's just the one of the 谈恋爱节目.
Yeah.
非常无聊.
非常完美.
Oh, 非常完美. It's like a 非常无聊 clone or the.
Yeah, kind of, but it's like so it's the opposite.
It's a dating show.
非常勿扰. It's all about females.
Okay.
非常完美 is all about males.
Oh, so they have one woman and 24 men or whatever, and then they're trying to date the girl.
So kind of, but it's like it's the way it's done and the production value was phenomenal. They have 29 different cameras.
Wow.
And it's all taped. It's not like we're switching at the board. They're all taped.
Oh, wow.
And then they, so I was, for example, I was at a show and for like a year plus and we had to sing, we have to like judge things, we have to do nonprofit stuff. It was awesome. Like I learned a lot about Chinese culture on that one, but that thing like blew up. It broke the TV ratings in China at the time. And I was told, and it was because it was so big in Asia that they made versions for Indonesia.
Oh wow!
So for example,
it started spreading the original Chinese show is spreading now outside over throughout Asia.
In Indonesia, Japan, Taiwan. When I was visiting, there's actually 4 different shows, TV channels airing at the same time.
Hey there, I'm from one of those online mattress companies. Apparently, people who listen to podcasts have an insatiable desire for mattresses, like can't get enough, fairy tale shit or something like that. The problem with most mattresses, though, is they make lousy tea. Just ask this guy who's not a paid shill. Well, I tried drinking my mattress, and it was pretty bad. I mean, first, I just put my lips on it and started sucking, but that didn't really work. Then I poured hot water on it, but that just made it wet and hot. Also, my girlfriend was like, it's 4 a.m., what are you doing? She's always like that. The problem would be solved if instead of a mattress, you were drinking Jesse's Tea House teas. Jesse gets teas straight from small tea shops and tea farmers in China and puts them into his subscription service. Just use the code JessePod for $10 off your first order of $30 and stop trying to drink your mattress. Yeah, so the show's going to Indonesia. It's going all over the place, and so how does that really, like, you know, and then when you come back to the States, this big hit show is going all over Asia, and when they come back to the States, what is the response?
Gosh, so the funny thing is, while everything was happening before, I actually was approached by a few CAA people, and I was like, oh wow. And
CAA, for people who don't know?
CAA is a creative artist agency.
Yep.
It's
big agency in Hollywood.
Big agency. I think Tom Hanks and all those people are with CAA.
Tom Hanks is doing good.
Yeah, he's all right.
He's doing good. Anyway, so so Tom Hanks. So anyway, so the agency people come and talk to you. What do they say?
Yeah, they were like, oh, cool, you know, like, but that was when the economy was great and we didn't have the trade war. But after coming back, it's like you said, not everyone actually values the credit there.
Yeah.
Even some people I've talked to, I don't want to name any names.
Yeah.
Were like, so all of those things in Chinese, huh? So, you know, that's like student films.
Yeah.
Or like, people, like, I was like, wait, that's not, that's like a $50 million project or a $100 million project. Like,
well, it's just, this is the thing, is like coming back to the States, like to have to deal with, for lack of a better term, just ignorance of what's going on in Asia. It's like, you know, to some degree, when I was in Asia, like I can't show up in Asia and be like, why don't you know everything about American film and comedy history? That would make no sense.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, so I feel like I can't expect any more of the Americans coming back here, but it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it, so how do you deal with that sort of like belittling attitude towards the work that you did in Asia, or how much of it is actually there and how much of it is maybe you picking up a belittling feeling when actually none is intended?
So I'm as a professional actor, we learn about empathy. We really try to understand the psyche behind everything and have a really specific statement or purpose for everything we say and hear. Yep. And so breaking it down, I feel like I met a lot of bad people when I first came back in terms of, like you said, is more close-minded. And that's why there's a natural instincts to click with third culture kids or people who are in international backgrounds. But because we think more alike and we're more like open to like, oh, let's change. Yeah. Let's be agile. But at the same time, I'm sure there are exceptions out there. But honestly, I just wish that people can go out a little bit more. Yeah. You know, travel a little more, see different cultures. Like, yes, there are projects that in Asia that weren't as good. Yeah. But there are also amazing
good stuff.
Talents.
And this is this is kind of in some way what the tea has been good for, is because, you know, Americans don't know very much about Chinese tea, but then you just show, like, even just the basic thing of seeing the table and seeing the leaves and seeing the color of the tea and how it's done from the pitcher to the filter to the cup and all this sort of things. Like, it makes people realize, like, oh, maybe if there's a lot to tea that, of course, it was developed in China. Of course, in Asia, they're doing great stuff with tea. Maybe there's also other stuff they're doing great stuff with, and it's just you don't see it because it's not showing up in front of you.
And you know what's for funny? Like, it's for people like us that we travel so much between. Like, I've literally filled out passports before.
Yeah, I had that happen once. I met a guy who worked for CBS News. He posted a picture on his Facebook. He has 12 passports. He's filled up 11 passports.
That's so funny.
He's like fly all around Asia doing the news. But so fill up passports, you know. But we're not the normal people. And so it's like, I definitely felt when I came back, it's like, well, you know, I'm very grateful for my time abroad, but I can't expect that sort of thinking from everybody here in the States. No, and yet, you know, it's almost like you don't need it. It's almost like the problem, though, isn't really the problem. It's the empathy. It's what you're talking about. Yeah. If people were empathetic, they would say stuff more like, wow, I've never heard of that show, but tell me about what the show is like. You know, and then they could make an assumption about the class of talent that you're working with or the type of project. Like, I wrote on a show called 冒犯家族, which was like a knockoff of SNL, but we did the full thing. We had celebrity guests every week, table read, second table read, all the props, everything. Crazy manic, 6 days a week, 1 day off, do it again, do it again, do it again.
Where did it air?
It was aired on ITE and 效果文化, the big company that does like 脱口秀大会 and all the big shows. So, but the point was, it was like, was the comedy on that show better than SNL? I mean, probably not, but it's kind of, it's really apples and oranges. It's hard to say. But like, I went through that experience as a writer and an actor and a cast member. And then to come back here, I'm almost unsure in my own self. Like, I think that was valuable, but am I going to get that sort of validation from outside? Probably not.
Okay, so here's the thing. I feel like that's a
How
big
should I be thinking about this?
Like, I'm just as confused when I came back. I wasn't until society confused you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so here's the thing. For me, as a global empathized person, I had to be growing up.
Yeah.
I feel like there's two parts to this. One is that there's definitely value, no matter what.
Yeah.
Just like opening different businesses. Even if
Yeah.
you fail the first 3 businesses, that's your capital, that's your experience.
Yep.
But or like just like governmental people, if people
Yeah.
are like the senators or whatever, or like even Joe Biden, for example.
Yeah.
He has some experience before he became the president.
Yeah.
And that's all valuable. That's not not that you can't just put that aside, no matter what culture it is. However, how much does it translate? Like, so I feel like we talked about comedy and drama and everything. Even the styles of acting is completely different. For example, in Chinese drama, it's like, Xianba. Like, there's a lot of subtle things they don't say, but in America, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They're more direct. So even if it's a subtle close-up shot, the personality and the scene done and treated or executed or reacted are still different.
And that's because the audiences are different. So again, in a Chinese, if in Chinese thing, if you're acting this thing and then, thought 1, thought 2, thought 3 goes through your head, but you're not saying it, and then, whatever,
exactly.
then that scene is not, it's not like, oh, that's bad writing. He just said, okay, and then he left.
Yeah.
That wasn't what the Chinese audience saw.
No, they saw the moment to moment to moment of thinking in the process.
Yeah, it's almost like a lot of if you watch, it just reminds me of a funny joke, but I had a Chinese friend who moved to the States. He had an American girlfriend, and they loved watching comedy together. And he said that it was the biggest problem in his life that he did not get Arrested Development. He did not get why it was funny. And then when I thought about it, I was like, that's because all the timings on Arrested Development are anti-timings. It's all like the stuff where like somebody should say something, but nobody does, and then you move on.
Awkward silences.
Yeah, the awkward silences. But again, it's like,
situation.
And I thought about putting it through my head of like, how would that appear to most Chinese viewers? And it's like some of the stuff will work, but it's you're gonna hit less than say like Friends.
Well, here's the thing, because sarcasm is a big thing in America.
Yeah.
Like musical theaters is the epitome of sarcasm. Right?
Yeah.
It derived from opera, which is it's like a parody of opera. That's how musical started. That's a very British and American culture.
Yeah.
But in China or a lot of Asia or even Japan, if you see, if you're super sarcastic, they're like, hi.
It's also tricky. I found because I would be in comedy clubs and I would hear tons of sarcasm on the stage when the Chinese were performing to the Chinese. But then in real life, I'd found it was like, unless people knew me really well, they would not be sarcastic around me. Just because they're expecting like, oh, you're foreign, you're not going to pick up on it.
Right.
It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just like, it would be, it's kind of already rude to be sarcastic. It would be like 5 times rude to be sarcastic to a foreigner who would have no way of picking it up.
Because they're taking it seriously.
Because they're taking it seriously. And so it's like, but again, so a lot of times what I found, like the difference between say the comedy styles, and maybe it's like this with acting as well, is it's like the tools in the toolkit are very similar. You're sort of the sort of logic that leads to comedy works everywhere, but then are you using, what techniques are you using to bring that out? That will kind of like, how many puns is too many puns? Like that's a cultural thing. It's not like there's like a number at which it becomes too many. And then when it becomes funny again for being too many. Like these are all things that are subtle and based off of the audience. And so I guess the question here would then be, is it possible to make a perfect performance for both audiences, or do you have to leave one in order to hit one?
Honestly, I think it can be. And I'm a strong advocate for this. But I can't wait to find the perfect production company that will work with me on this. Just because, for example, let's say we're doing an Asian American story or like a cross-cultural story. It's a U.S. story with China or U.S. story with Taiwan. So cross-cultural story. And let's say we're speaking in Chinese. 那我们可以这样讲，好，没关系嘛，对不对？是不是？ But it's like, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Yeah. So we can still, depending on the language, depending on the culture, depending on the moment and the tone, you can switch into personality right away. But not a lot of people pick it up yet, just like we're not the norm. So I'm a strong advocate. I can't wait to be a part of a project where not just the actor ourselves, or even part of the writers, or even maybe one of the producers, to do that, but also the
just
whole
the more
team.
people you get on, the better. Because it's like all these little things. It's like whether it's comedy, whether it's acting. I'm sure there's some producer somewhere who's sitting there who likes to do cross-cultural productions, and it's like, here's where you find the good props. Here's where you find the costumes that really feel like the things that the people in the middle are wearing. And I think the challenge is that there's this I think there's this perception that audience is not big enough to run the thing. But that is making the assumption that only people in that audience will care. Like, if you have I found that like people are, interested in the work that I do coming back in the intercultural stuff, even if they have no China background. Just because if you make good entertaining stuff, or at least through your own personal force of will can attract the audience, then they're there. And then once they're there to watch what you brought them to watch. And so I think there's a lot of potential for future cross-cultural stuff. Like, do you have any sort of like dream thing you'd like to do cross-culturally?
I would love to be a part of like, even those projects like Warrior or like, Kung Fu, like, but or different, but I see where everything's going. I still honestly, and not to name names or whatever, but I still feel like that's the direction we need to go to the next level. The authenticity and stuff like that. Because again, and it's a constant struggle. Even when I first came back, to see the Asians versus the Asian Americans, and or even levels of that. But honestly, I would love to be, because we've lived in different cultures, and I was literally raised in America, so we see the difference. And I know that, and I can't wait to find that team that can sell, like you said, the products or projects here, but also make sure we really, really honor the authenticity of also the locals, if that's what we're talking about. If you're talking about Asian Americans, fine. But if you're talking about actual real Asian stories, if it's historic or not historic, please be authentic, you know? And
this is
that's
like
disrespectful if it's not.
I've been a little bit surprised coming back into moving to Hollywood and then realizing that a lot of people in Hollywood that make the stuff don't recognize the difference between Asians and Asian Americans. They're different cultures. But of course, I'm totally the wrong person to tell them this. Like, I've had some like awkward conversations where I get really jazzed about this because like I know so many great Asian creators. And then people will be like, oh, like, well, there's so much interest in Asian content now. I'm like, well, there's a lot of interest in Asian American content, but like, I can't set up a show for like a top comedian from Asia here and get like anyone from the scene here to help me. Like, because it's just a different, ultimately it comes down to where the money is made. If they are able to make the money in the Asian market, then they can do that. In China specifically, it's hard to make money in the Chinese market if you're coming from the outside. So like, but beyond the industry-ness of it, just sort of like as an artist, going forward, like where do you think the cool places are in the future for like bilingual performers? Like, I'm back here, I speak both languages. I would love to be parts of those things. Where are you seeing any positive movement towards creating that sort of thing?
So I can't wait to start finding some partners to create more projects. Like you mentioned earlier, we kind of have to create our own projects. Because like even here, like Asian Americans do own the majority of Asian contents here, and I wish I get a chance to talk to these people and just literally, please just honor the authenticity even more, because that's the only way we could open a completely huge market. It's a huge market. Even this year, I was just talking to some producers. Actually, my friend who was one of the top producers at Tencent before Pigeon Pictures, and even they were telling me like this year's box office was even bigger than pre-COVID.
Really?
In China.
So they're back.
They're back, yeah, but it's very theme-based contents, but still they are semi-back, and the market will never go away.
Yeah.
The population is not going to just disappear.
Well, it's also like the thing is in lots of parts of the world, like, in America, in these big cities, we're very fortunate. Like, you could go to a movie, but also you could go to an axe throwing bar or a vampire themed whatever cocktail lounge. A lot of places in the world, in China, you got karaoke in the movies and eating out. Yeah. These are the big things that people do. So like there's a lot of people that go to the movies and it's a lot of fun because you don't have like a random axe throwing bar in like the suburbs of a 4th-tier city in China. But those people want to see a good story. They want to see they want to see something fun. And like and it's also like that in lots of parts of America as well. Like, so the that huge market is there. I feel conflicted because I don't want to give up on it. I'm kind of similar situation. I have a lot of followers over in Asia. We're making this show in English and we're not playing to that audience like straight up. And I feel it's kind of a bit of a shame because it would be nice to be able at this time to be able to do more cross-cultural stuff. But it's so hard to get those right projects together that's really going to hit both. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like one of the things is also on our disadvantage is because the censorship, right? Yeah. Sometimes. So like, I mean, well, not, or I shouldn't say use that word. I should say like it's because of different places use different platforms.
Yeah. Well, the internets are bifurcated. So the systems are set up so that there's kind of a Chinese domestic internet and then there's the rest of the world.
Yeah, let's cut cut that word off.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever I don't know what that is. But like the challenge is it's almost like it's both technological and artistic. But let's say that you have the technological problems aside. Yeah. What are things like elements that you think would be in a good intercultural movie that you'd like to see more of?
Oh gosh, I would love to do an underdog movie, like an underdog movie that has so many cultural elements. And I don't want to be like segregation of like Asian American story, guys. Look at me, Asian American story. Yeah, we need to have Asian. No, come on, like. We can have a star that's Asian American story, yes, but let's have a diversity in there. Let's show them that we can do diverse as well. Yeah. And I want to implement that because, again, that's how I grew up. Like I learned, and I was thankful for so many people that helped me along the way from different cultures. I have one of my best buddies, African American. He's an Academy member who did an animation. He did Benjamin Button, the face. He did Spider-Man. He did Transformers. He's an Academy member. Amazing, African American. And Hispanic friends that's doing phenomenal. Well, actually, no, they're not doing phenomenal. Some of them are not doing phenomenal, but I don't care. They're my friends. They're just super kind people. Yeah. And like just every elements. So my ideal goal is to do maybe a TV show that's like super diverse. And I'm already in the process of like, putting the concepts and everything together. But I can't wait to find some good producers to work on this together. And let's bridge this. Let's not disconnect this bridge.
Yeah, because I think that it's almost, there's a flip side that I always felt in China to everything being difficult when it comes to intercultural stuff. Because China has their own challenge, like the country's mostly Han Chinese. It's hard. It was always hard to sell anybody on the idea of the foreign character being a main character or even really a support character that would like have their own opinions involved. But beyond that, it always felt like all of these challenges, the flip side to the challenge is that the audience is so thirsty for something better that if you can make something better, they really enjoy it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, here's the thing, like because we experienced similar things. You were there for 9 years, I was there for 8.5 years. Like what I learned actually, to the opposite of what people are saying about China is that living there and actually really trying to understand the culture, even from a foreign element, because literally my morals, I grew up in Santa Monica, so it was like as wide as it can get. I'm sorry, but it was, and I went to school in Santa Barbara, which is also as wide as. But the point is, after really understanding the culture in China, they are extreme capitalists, which means they're extremely open-minded to trying different things, be agile, be innovative. Yeah. As you see, like they're.
Well, I saw a lot of people coming in the 2014-15. They were coming from Hollywood to China because you could actually make a movie that didn't have a number on the end of it. Like Like there were people, I had friends of mine that were, film school at USC, came to China and directed, like they had those the 45-minute shorts. But like if you're a director, like, yeah, it's maybe not your dream project of your entire life to shoot a 45-minute straight to internet thing, but like they were actually making movies in a way that it felt like here things kind of had ossified. In fact, even being back now in the States, I find a lot of my best creative energy in the internet creator community because these are people who are like, hey, like we don't have that background of having gone to the film school and being taught what it's supposed to look like and here's how a project is created. They're like, let's throw up some lights somewhere and use the slow-mo setting on the iPhone and like shoot this thing. That sort of creative energy is just like good. I just think it's like good to be around, So so I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of cool stuff going forward. I think we're almost out of time, so I want to ask a couple questions going in, just sort of the end, sort of quick takes. Give me whatever 30 seconds, 1 minute max on your take on the thing, and just quick answer. First question: what's your favorite tea, and what kind of tea do you like to drink?
My favorite is Alishan Oolong cha, Alishan的.
Alishan,
especially from Alishan. Because it's very pungent and it smells great. It has a few aftertastes. It's kind of like the aroma. Nice. So it reminds me of like this really elegant diffusers, but with some local cultures in it. Yeah. So it's the good stuff. Yeah, it's the good stuff. It's the good stuff. Next little short question. As somebody who lives between cultures, what advice would you give to people that want to be a person who lives between the cultures? Gosh, just no ego, guys. No ego. Go in there and just immerse yourself. Like even when I was in Beijing, he lived in Sanlitun, which is like a very foreign district, right? Well, I lived in Gulo. I didn't live in Sanlitun. Gulo, so that's great.
上一村老外太多了。
是没错，老外太多了，就像这样。So anyway, so Gulo. I've also lived in my friend's place in the hutong. Hutong. Just to experience that, like, which is hutong for those of you who don't know what it is. It's basically living in those ancient buildings that's thousands of years old.
These alleyways that were set up by the Mongols. So like it's old.
It's so old. It's like right next to the Forbidden City. But so it's kind of like those ancient buildings. But inside, of course, they have the actual bathrooms now.
So immersion. So and then for people who, let's say that they're not going to be able to travel a lot, but if you want to engage more in other cultures without necessarily leaving your home country, what's one thing that you can do?
Follow me on TikTok. We'll talk about.
That was smooth. That was smooth. Oh, so smooth. No hair on that. Oh, just so smooth. I like it. But but why? Why would they follow you?
No. So follow me on TikTok or like other social media because I'm finally doing social media now.
Yep.
And follow him as well, Jesse. And because we love talking about cultural stuff and cultural elements. If you can't travel with us on the phone. You know? Like
it's actually, I mean, like it sounds silly, but like I really think that the ability to look on your phone and see stuff from all around the world, but also people who lived around the world is totally new.
Yeah.
In the 80s, they didn't have this.
Yeah.
If you wanted to if you wanted to learn about other cultures, you could look in like a encyclopedia or whatever. Like it was nuts. Continuing on, just sort of rapid fire questions. If you had to pick one, where's the better food, China or the United States?
Oh, shucks. Honestly, there's a lot more different flavors and stimulus in China.
Yeah.
So much more. But honestly, I can never say favorite for any culture because I love traveling. Yeah. But I do like my own version of Chinese food. Where I like implement other ingredients and fresh ingredients and everything.
So you're beyond the boundaries. You use whatever you want.
Yes, off the menu, please. Please order off the menu. Say their local languages. If I go to a Mexican restaurant, I want to bring my Mexican friends to order for me off the menu. Let me try something new.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And then last question's just sort of trying to think if I had one more left. Just sort of in the if you had a tea pet bunny. So what would you name the bunny? Tutu. Well, very good. I'm going to give you a tea pet as a thank you for coming on the show. You got a little Tutu over here with you.
I got a Tutu.
Thank you very much. For those of you who have been watching, thank you again so much for watching a conversation. Hopefully it was interesting for you guys. As always, if you're new to the channel, remember I'm Jesse, Jesse's Tea House. I get all my teas directly from China, or in this case from Taiwan. We send them over to the States. We have them in the States, and if you order, we'll ship them to you immediately. We have the tea sets. Everything that you're seeing on here, including the tea kettle, is on the website. And that's the best way to support the channel and support tea culture in the States getting bigger, is to just try teas. There's no secret about it. Get good tea, make it. I have info cards with all the teas that come along with in steep times and temperatures and stuff like that, make it easy. And then we have this great online community as well to be able to help people become tea people. So thank you again, Simon, so much for coming on.
Thanks, man. Thanks
Appreciate it. Where can they find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, so Simon Twu, that's spelled Twu. So Simon Twu on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yes.
Facebook has Simon Twu Tu Shiming. I'm finally getting on social media again.
Yeah.
I stopped for a while because, in Asia.
It's intense. Yeah.
It's intense.
It's
like
intense.
people follow you, they know where you live.
It's crazy. I mean, there have been some, especially it's a weird ride. It's like very high highs and very low lows. But I think it's just as a creator, like I just find that like, having people to actually talk to, you just make better stuff. Like you gotta get out there and you gotta do your own thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Very cool. Awesome. So thank you again so much for coming. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.